The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, this is Stephanie. You should probably be seeing a slide that says Decoding the Annual Report. We're going to, if you don't see that, just drop us a line in the chat or questions, or you can even unmute yourself. You are all muted right now. We're going to start at 1:30, so we're just going to wait for a few extra people to show up, and everything will get started. All right, hi again, everyone. It is 1:30, so we do have a lot to cover, and I want to make sure that we leave a lot of time for any questions that may come up. So I'm going to get started just with a couple of introductions. If you can't recognize my voice, I am Stephanie Farrell. I am the manager of technology services, and I'm joined with me here is Josie Wilson, manager of collections and resource sharing. And together, we have been answering annual report questions for probably a decade. And this is the first time, however, that we've kind of lifted the hood off the Polaris report so that you can see the nuts and bolts. So you are in for a treat. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So here is our agenda for our hour together. Josie is going to provide a brief overview of the Public Library Services Branch's annual report, where you will fill it out and some more important information. then I'll take you through the Polaris annual report section. Now, you don't necessarily need it beside you while going through today's session, but it certainly does help if you do. After that, we'll cover the non-Polaris figures that YRL provides the information for. And again, we'll save time for questions at the end. You can feel free to type questions in the question box as we go, but we won't be answering them until the end. And keep in mind that the session is being recorded in case it's okay to nip off if you have to. I cannot see you. So here we go. Our goal for today is to develop your knowledge of how the Polaris annual report is coded and how it relates to the questions in the PLSB annual report. By the end of the session, you will be able to identify which figures in the annual Polaris annual report corresponds to the PLSB annual report. You'll be able to identify possible challenges or differences between how your library's data is collated to fit, and you will be able to locate the resources that YRL compiles to assist you filling out your library's PLSB annual report. And how many times can we say report? Here we go. Josie is going to take over the mic for a minute here and give you an overview of the annual report.
Hi everyone, it's Josie Wilson here. Happy New Year, and welcome to, I guess this is really our kickoff for training for 2021. So welcome to our first webinar of the year. It's great to see that there are 30 of you here. That's absolutely fantastic. We're thrilled with that. Stephanie told me to be brief, so I'll try to not talk too fast and not talk too much. Overview of your annual report. Your public library survey and annual report is the official name of what you have to submit to PLSB by the end of February each year. Now, I know that this might be review for some of you because I know we have a lot of seasoned managers in this group today, but we also have a lot of new managers who have started within our region over the past year, who may be in the group today or watching this at a later date. So this slide is really for those folks. So why do you have to do this? Well, you have to do this in order to get your provincial library funding. So filling in this report, having it approved by your board, and submitting it to the PLSB by February 28th is basically half of what you have to do to get your library grant, so your money to operate your library each year. The other half is submitting your financial statements and your I'm losing it now, your plan of service. So those two things, I say plan of service and annual report, are really like the key to you operating your library and getting your grant funding from the province. So if you want to keep going with your library, then you need to do this work. We try to make it as easy as possible for you from the Polaris end, and that's what Stephanie's really going to go through so that you can just take the numbers from that Polaris annual report and plug it into the Public Library Services branch LibPass. That is what they use to collate the data. It's called LibPass, and you should have received a login for that from Jen Anderson, who works for Public Library Services branch. And if you have not received anything from her regarding LibPass, search your emails, look in your junk mail, and if you still cannot find anything, then please email her for the login information. In years past, we have had your login information, but due to privacy concerns, this year PLSB is not sharing that with the regions, and they have asked that you contact them directly. So once again, if you can't log into LibPass, if you're having any technical issues with LibPass, please contact Jen Anderson at Public Library Services branch. I think that's about all I have for the overview. I've probably taken a couple minutes longer than I should have. But really, this annual report is something you must do, and we try our best to make it as easy as possible for you. And of course, the other thing is, look, if you're a new library manager, look at years past, what has been written and what has been done. There's lots of places for comments and things like that you can put in. So you can often get kind of an idea of what has been done in the past by looking at those comments and what other library managers have filled out. So I'll throw it back to Stephanie, and that is your brief overview of why this is important to do and why we're talking about it today.
Awesome. Thank you, Josie. So in order to assist libraries in filling out the PLSB annual report, we have this report, the Polaris Annual Report. Now, this is a snapshot of what it looks like. It was mailed to library managers on January 4th. If you did not receive it or if you accidentally deleted it, no need to worry. We have a copy saved. So please just mention it in the comments, questions, send us an email. We'll get it to you, no problem. We advise you that to not run this report during core business hours as it can impact system performance, and you're not going to get any different numbers than what the one we sent you has. So just keep the one that you've got. From the slide here, you'll see that the purple headings in the report correlate to the sections in the PLSB annual report. But before we go on, I want to change my slide. One second. Here we go. I want to start with this adage. Reports are only as good as the data that goes into them. Now, that's not implying that your data is not good. Far from it. It's also not saying that reports in Polaris are not good. Again, far from it. What this is meant to do is to start the session with a reflective moment. Reflect on how your collection is organized, how it's labeled, on your processes. Not just in Polaris, but in your actual physical location. Something can be one thing in one venue and different in the other. As we go through this webinar, it's important to be mindful of the fact that there are 178 autonomous libraries in track between 4 regional library systems sharing one ILS. Each has unique operations and workflows, as well as their own unique combination of data points. The Public Library Services Branch annual report is sent to all public libraries in Alberta. Those questions were not built with Polaris in mind. It's asking your library to provide measurements of data that you may just not collect or that you collect differently. The Polaris annual report may not provide all the answers, but it's the best way that TRAC is determined to extract the data from the system. You may collect your monthly statistics religiously and feel that those are a more accurate representation, and that's okay. Just be consistent. It's your library, it's your data. The purpose of this session is to decode this specific report so you have a sense of why those numbers may not match. Now let me say it again. The Polaris Annual Report is TRAC's best attempt at extracting the numbers out of Polaris to answer the PLSB's questions. Now with that out of the way, we have a lot to cover, so let's dive in. So we'll start at the Collections and Resources section under Collection Management and Print Items Acquired. This is all the material that has been added to Polaris that has a logged creation date between January 1st and December 31st, 2020, that has a material type of book, large print, or paperback. It also must have a record status of final. Now, what does that mean? Well, all item records have either a status of final or deleted. There's also provisional, but that's beyond the scope of what you need to know. Deleted is fairly self-explanatory. So you can think of final as everything not deleted. Now, what if you added an item in March, but it got damaged and withdrawn and then deleted by the end of the year? That's not going to be counted because it doesn't meet the criteria of having a final record status. Think of there being an AND Boolean operator between all of these statements. Now, I don't want to lose anyone with the terminology, so we're going to quickly go over a sample item record here. When I talk about item record status, it's referring to the information at the top of the item record. So you'll see at the very top with the arrow, item record status final. The collection code is found in the collection drop-down list. The material type is listed below. When I refer to item status, I'm talking about the circulation status. Now, the creation date is found in the item record properties. If you're adding a new item record and then click Save, that's the creation date. We will bring up modification date as well, and that's in the properties and can refer to any change made in a record, whether it's changing the collection code, barcode, call number, or manually changing an item's circulation status, but not through a checkout or a check-in. So let's jump back in. For non-print items, the creation date and record status parameters remain the same, except now it's counting the 21 other material types that aren't book, large print, or paperback, or related to digital content. So what are those 21? Here they are. Now, I'd like to make a quick note about one in particular, kits. Some libraries have kits that are full of books. Some libraries may have backpacks full of games or crafts. Another library may consider a multi-disc language learning kit set a kit. Others may catalog those children's books with CDs or DVDs that come in plastic bags as kits. Polaris doesn't know the contents. It just knows that it's material type kit and it's counting it. Now, print items withdrawn is fairly self-explanatory. It is anything with the material type of book, large print, or paperback that has a status of lost, missing, or withdrawn. Now, there is no record status parameter here, as this includes those with final and deleted statuses. Similarly, the non-print withdrawn follows those same parameters, just with those 21 material types. So that's covering what is added and deleted from your system, from your collection. And now we're going to go into the counts. So this is where we want to know all of the items in your collection. Print items will print volumes will count all the items in your collection that are book, large print, and paperback. And periodicals, which is shown here, is everything with a material type of magazine that is not lost, missing, or withdrawn. So now let's move on to the non-print. Audiobooks are counting all items with the material type of book daisy, book on cassette, yes, those still exist, book on CD, and book on MP3. Again, not lost, missing, or withdrawn with a final record status. Music counts everything in your collection with the material type of music cassette, music CD, and music MP3. Video. Here it's counting your Blu-rays, DVDs, combo packs, and all those VHS tapes. Software and video games counts exactly that. Now we've mentioned kits already and what classifies as that, and they would be counted under here. When it comes to objects, this is where it's important, again, to know your collection and what you classify as what. In your report, the objects pulls all the items that you have as material type object. For instance, this can be anything: family passes, video game controllers, posters, devices, puzzles, meters. There are only 413 items with the material type of object in track. That's not a lot of material. There's only 54 items amongst 9 YRL libraries. So just knowing your collection and you'll know what this is. Now then there's everything else. So this is Braille, equipment, game toy, map, microforms, and playaways. These all go in the other category. And so that concludes the section on collection and resources. But before we jump into the section on circulation, I want to pause again. Now this next section you may find confusing. Just as I said earlier, reports are only as good as the data that goes into them. Similarly, sometimes the data isn't going to fit the report. The data is only as good as the questions that are asked. Wait, what? We get a lot of questions asking why these numbers don't match the numbers you have in your monthly statistics. Because they're counting different things. This report is built specifically to answer the questions in PLSB annual report to the best of our ability to get those numbers out of the system. The only way we're able to get circulation figures close to what this PLSB is asking is to map the collection code. But we don't have a single cut and dry young adult print collection that we can run circulation statistics on. You may not even have a young adult print section in your library, but that's not to say that you don't have teen books. How are you going to report on something that you don't collect? All Polaris knows is that collection code ID 173 is young adult, and this is the number that was in transaction type ID 6001, the code for checkout for this period of time at this location. And you could go deeper and ask the question, is an adult book that a young adult borrows still considered an adult book? There are a lot of things that the code can't tell us. But I don't think the PLSB annual report is meant to get that deep, so let's get into the zeros and ones. Circulation by print and non-print is fairly straightforward, with the exception of some more flexible codes. However, breaking circulation down by target group, adult, youth, juvenile, is more challenging. Keep in mind the 4 regional library systems, 178 ways of doing things. The best way that we can get this information is to map the collection codes. How many collection codes are there in Polaris? 244. Some are generic, some are super specific, but this is the closest indicator we have to identifying target group. Again, the data is only as good as the questions that are asked. Sometimes the data doesn't fit the report. So reflect on your collection. Report as best you can and just be consistent. If you're looking at the Polaris annual report, you'll notice that there is a total circulations line that says it includes all other circulations. What does that mean? That's an interesting one. It includes the previous numbers, but it adds in ebook and e-audiobooks or checkout, but not all of them. I know that can be frustrating. The integrated ebooks and audiobooks certainly pose a challenge for us in getting figures out of Polaris for more reasons than I can discuss here. But those are virtual statistics, and we're going to get to those. Now, what about items that don't have a collection code? Libraries are really good about having collection codes associated with their items. However, there are a few, 1,000-ish, that don't. The majority are those integrated ebooks and audiobooks that have an item record created for them automatically when they are checked out. They don't always have collection codes. But there are physical library materials that don't have a collection code for one reason or another. If it doesn't have a collection code, it's not getting counted here. Now, I went tonight to get a sense of how many this would be. And for the most part, these are the Cloud Library and Overdrive titles. However, if a library has an item that doesn't have a collection code and you circ it, that's a circ you're missing. So we're actually going to follow up with libraries to let them know how many circs that this would be that are missing, that are not considered ebooks and audiobooks. But this is also a good time to mention that we can also help with assigning collection codes to your collection if you need. But anyway, for the adult print, we are mapping 82 of those 244 collection codes. If you are curious as to all of this, I've put the link in my slide here, bit.ly/Polaris annual report. That is a breakdown of all of this here. It tells you all of the collection codes so that you can see what is actually being counted. And then all of the links and information is at the end of the webinar here. So next would be circulation of young adult print. As I mentioned before, if you don't classify your teen books with these collection codes, you may not have high numbers in this. And if another library does, and your patron places a hold on the item and it's brought in, and you have numbers here, that's where those checkouts are from. Anyway, there are 10 collection codes that are mapped to provide those numbers. For juvenile, there are 40 mapped collection codes. Adult non-print runs the gamut. It's all the DVDs, the generic ones, nonfiction, generic. There are 61 collection codes. For young adult non-print, there are 15 mapped collection codes. And for juvenile non-print, we'll stop again and explain another example of the challenge with mapping. Back to kits. With 175 libraries in track, 178 libraries in track, and over 6,000 item records with the collection code of just plain old kits, there isn't going to be one single definition. So when determining the mapping, the track groups agreed on which codes would fall where. And we looked at the items and determined where the majority of the items would be classified. In this case, it's under juvenile. So a collection code of just kits is mapped as juvenile. Now moving along, non-cataloged, well, I can't tell you what wasn't cataloged. And then for periodicals, there are 8 mapped collection codes. We're going to skip over the virtual category. We'll be seeing that in a little bit. And now I'm just going to, again, hand the mic over to Josie, who will briefly address interlibrary loan statistics.
Hi again, everyone. So we've had a really interesting year for circulation with interlibrary loans because the PLSB changed their interlibrary loan software platform and how they are dealing with interlibrary loans, because this new software platform is designed to facilitate interlibrary loan within Alberta and within Alberta, primarily within Alberta public libraries. So I have a question out to PLSB to ask them, what their expectations are of providing statistics for the outside of Alberta and the outside of Canada pieces. And then, of course, with COVID and everything else happening, and then because of the delay, we didn't have IOL because of the delay of the rollout by PLSB of the new software. These numbers are going to look really, really different than they have in the past. And I think, the number one thing that I hear from people is they worry, well, what if numbers go down? What is this? Automatically think that's bad. That's going to look bad on my library if I put in zeros or if I don't put in any numbers. That is really what this little notes feature is for here. So it's going to be hard for you to see, but there's a little pen and a little piece of paper to the left of the zero. And that's the notes feature or the comments feature. And you can put in a comment to say, IOL changed, because really who might be looking at this too is your board. And they might say, well, how come last year you had 25 ILLs outside of Alberta but within Canada, and this year you have none? So if you put in a notes feature there saying ILL was unavailable from, honestly, in 2020, I can't even remember what month it was unavailable. I think it was March, February, April. I don't even know. At some point before COVID. And then didn't come back until September, and then has gotten shut down again, right, in December or November, whenever it got shut down again, and is still shut down. So our hands are a bit tied with this section this year. The other thing is that the reason that this was listed like this is because this is how we would get data out of VDX before. And this is not how I've been getting data sent to me from Relay. So I actually, as of right now, don't even have information broken down by each library from Relay. And I don't even have the ability to get it. It's sent to me from PLSB. So they send me the numbers for YRL as a region, and that's it. So I have a question into them right now to say, what are your expectations for this section? And PLSB is having a set of webinars next week. And so I am hoping that they will give us some more clarification, and then I will let you all know what the expectations will be. Because it could be that because ILL within Alberta is a PLSB service, that they will just and they have access to the stats in Relay, that they will just report as an aggregate for the province. I'm not sure what's going to happen. So this section right now, I would recommend leaving blank. There are some numbers on your Polaris report that speak to this section right now, but because of the system change from VDX to Relay and everything else that's happened this year, I would refrain from putting those numbers in for now until you hear more from me on this. So I will send out information directly to all the library managers when I know. And if you have any questions or any concerns in the meantime, please let me know. So that's my brief I don't know for this section for right now, but you can, I think, feel pretty confident to just leave it blank for now, and then we will hopefully have some better answers for you we will have some better answers for you before the February 28th deadline, and I hope before you have to take this to your library boards for approval.
Great, thank you, Josie. All right, so we're going to take another step to pause, and before we move on to the final section, another moment of reflection. Time is relative. Now, I'm not going to get into the special theory of relativity because, frankly, I don't quite understand it, but I do understand that it means that the rate of which time passes depends on your frame of reference. Now, this is really loosely related to the section on card holders and how active is defined for both you and others. Now, for the PLSB survey, annual report rather, they define active as those whose cards have not expired. That's fairly straightforward. Your frame of reference for what active means may be different. But again, the Polaris Annual Report provides the answer to the question that is asked in the PLSB report. And unlike our circulation session, this is pretty cut and dry, except if you have family cards, but let's just take a look. So card holders. Total active card holders includes everyone registered at your library with an expiration date on or after January 1st, 2021. So card holders is always one where you're like, well, if I run it today with these parameters, it includes someone who expires today. Yesterday is not counted. So, but this is just how it goes in this report. So we're just answering the question. Now in this total, it includes family card holders. Again, this is where knowing what your library does is important. So if you are one of the 31 of 44 member libraries that use the family patron code, you need to stop here and ask yourself, how do we process family card holders? Do we give each member of a family a card? In other words, a family of 4 will have 4 cards. Enter the number here and move on. What if you give 1 card to be shared between multiple people? So that same family of 4, there's only 1 card to rule them all. If that's the case, I apologize, you're going to have to do some math. So let's get our other number. 1 card per family, you need this number from the Polaris Annual Report. This is the number of cards with the patron code of family that are not expired. But now what? Here is the equation. Total card holders equals your total active resident card holders, or TARCs, minus your family active resident card holders, or FARCs, plus your FARC number times 3.1. Why 3.1? Well, that's the number the PLSB tells you to use. So let's just walk through this example here with an example from a library. This library has 212 TARCs, but we're going to be subtracting those 19 FARCs because we're going to take those 19 FARCs and multiply them by 3.1, leaving us with 193 TARCs and 58.9 FARCs, which is 251.9 total card holders, but that's close enough to a whole person, so we round up to 252, and that's what we enter in LibPass. Okay, Stephanie, but what about those inactive card hold numbers in the Polaris Annual Report? What do I do with those? Well, if you're asking that, the answer is nothing. They're not there for you to add them all together. It's just to give you a sense of how many other people are potential patrons if you need to give information to your board, especially in a year like 2020. Like I said, time is relative. Card holders is tough, as it's just a snapshot in time. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears and we're going to go over the non-Polaris figures in the order that they appear in LibPass. The top bar here refers to the section in LibPass, and the bottom bar is the spreadsheet where you're going to find them. And don't worry, I'll give the link at the end if you don't know where to find those spreadsheets. In previous years, you would have had to manually add up multiple spreadsheets. But for 2020, we made it a little easier for you and gathered all the virtual statistics in one place. So this includes checkouts in Overdrive, Hoopla, RB Digital, and for the first time, library-specific cloud library stats. So you just throw in that total number in that direct circulations virtual section. Under the information services and use category, your virtual visits, you report the number of sessions from your WSFL statistics that are in the shared statistics folder. So you just find your library and in the tabs and you'll see the breakdown. Just below that section in LibPass will be the in-library material use. It's either an estimate or an actual count. Now here there is no YRL provided information. This will again be one of those what do you collect moments. If you gather up all the items in your library that are sat on a table or on the side of a shelf or on the floor, and you check them in via the in-house check-in module in Polaris, you will be able to get an actual count. The instructions are on the website, and again, I'll refer to that at the end of the slides. Now, if you don't do that, then you can just use the estimate. I'm sure 2020 is going to be an outlier, whichever you choose. Now, lastly, under the electronic performance measures is the public Wi-Fi section. It's either an estimate or a count, but you are able to report the actual count. We have a separate spreadsheet with the monthly breakdown, but to save you the step, we added the total to that virtual total spreadsheet. So that's just on the end of that. Now, the slide you've probably all been waiting for. If you want more information or you just got distracted by something else, you can always access our helpful resources from the YRL website. So you just go to yrl.ab.ca. On the homepage under quick links will be annual report information. Click on that and all the information will be there. There are links to the PLSB information, statistics, and facts. You can also get to the statistics if you want to get there directly for the non-Polaris figures by going to bit.ly/YRL stats 2020. And remember that we collect these throughout the year. So if you want to start doing monthly statistics on your non-Polaris figures, we do that every month. And then lastly, we are always available by email, phone. If you want to help, you can contact Josie or myself or the consultants in LDS by emailing askyrl.ab.ca at yrl.ab.ca. So that kind of wraps up the main part about the Polaris annual report. It was a lot. We're going to maybe stop recording and open the floor to any questions that you have. So there was